What's up, guys? In this video, I want to talk about the Austin shooting that occurred last weekend on March 1st, an active attack in the 6th Street area where a ton of college kids typically gather. It's a really congested entertainment district. The shooting occurred at 2 a.m., so about when bars let out. This was intentional. In that event, there were 3 dead, 19 now. People were shot and injured. So a very chaotic and horrific event, no doubt. To date, at least, the FBI has not said that there's a nexus to terrorism. However, we know through the video and the reports that the shooter was wearing a Property of Allah shirt and an Iranian shirt underneath that. So it was definitely politically motivated, if nothing else. In this case, police did an awesome job. They responded very, very rapidly. Again, it is an entertainment district where they would have been patrolling. And so they had lots of cops on the X really quickly. 57 seconds is what it said. A body cam video has come out, and so it demonstrates the chaos that they had to deal with in identifying where the shooter was and then neutralizing that threat. So hats off to those guys. They did a fantastic job of stopping the shooting really, really quickly. So I want to just hit on a few things, because the reality is I think that we can continue to see these types of attacks in our country. One, from a political perspective, to destabilize, to create fear, terrorism, and it could be a lot more organized and a lot worse for sure. So I think these things will continue to occur. The question is, well, what do we do? What are some solutions that we can look at? One, from an individual perspective, and then also, I think, from organizations. And so whenever we're looking at our ability to protect ourselves, protect those around us, we need to be prepared. We know that these things are going to happen. So the question is, how prepared are you individually? And then from an organizational perspective, from a bar, from a entertainment venue, all those kinds of things, we need to be asking ourselves these questions. Are we prepared, or are we just relying on police alone? And we know from data that if that is our solution to these things, then typically we're going to be waiting like 7 to 12 minutes, not this 57 seconds, which still claimed 19 injured and 3 dead. So we see how fast these things happen. So individually, if you have the training, if you are legally able to carry a weapon on you, I would do so. Now, the weapon is your mind, and so that training and understanding use of force and those things is super key. It's not just a matter of, hey, I've been shooting all my life, I'm a pretty good shot with a pistol, so I'm just going to decide to start carrying. There are things that need to go into that. Just like this guy probably had some preparation time, you need to have some preparation time to defend yourself. And so in general, from an individual perspective, in order to use deadly defensive force, we need to reasonably perceive that an unlawful deadly force threat is present immediately to yourself or somebody else. If I am that armed citizen, being that guy, like, I am definitely going to respond no matter what, that may not be the right choice. And the reason being is, if you're not within sight and sound of bad guy and you're just running to the threat with gun in hand, then there's a very good chance that you're going to meet with other law enforcement officers or another armed citizen that is going to misidentify you, and we're going to put ourselves even worse position. And so running to the fight, while sounds very admirable, and we need good defenders without a doubt, in a lot of cases, we can actually cause more harm than good. It just depends, right? Just like most things, it just depends. And so really the two things that are most important is time and distance from the threat, because if you have the most amount of information, then you can determine a response. So those that are within sight and sound of an attack have the most amount of information. In this case, they can see this guy's walking around with a rifle, randomly shooting people, and has Property of Allah on his. Like, we can pretty much figure out what this guy is about and what is happening and their intent. If you are within sight and sound of an active attack, then that response is legitimate and is typically a good idea in most cases. But you have to determine that based on where you're at and make a good, educated decision at that moment. So how are we preparing? What we do is prepare teams to respond. So I am a firm believer that whenever you vet and train multiple peoples within an organization. That can be a business, a church, or a school. We have a lot better chances of survival and preserving life than if we don't have anything and we're just waiting on police. So most channels you'll see just talk about the individual being prepared. What we are trying to do is help organizations to be prepared by simply having a number of people within the organization. Let's say it's Buford's Bar, right? So having a number of people who are vetted and armed to be able to respond where if they're in sight and sound of unprovoked violence like this, they can respond and preserve life. We've been doing it on the church side for a long time. And to me, I think from an organization's perspective, your liability is very low with regard to responding to active shooter events where the community sees the importance of neutralizing that threat, and your liability as an organization and as an individual are very low because the threats that we're talking about you're responding to are extremely obvious. The ambiguity is very low. So preparing your organization to be ready by creating welcome parties, by having groups of individuals that are vetted and they're trained to be able to respond to these things effectively and preserving life after the threat is taken out, to be able to know what to do until we get these folks to definitive care. And so having education and training in these things is going to preserve life without a doubt. So that's all I had on this Austin thing. Expect more. It's a horrific thing where this guy is literally just going to a bar scene where he knows there's not going to be any resistance at all. And so it is a cowardly act, and we see another one. So get prepared. I'm a former law enforcement officer, security consultant. We help businesses, churches, and schools get prepared for these things when seconds count, and first responders are minutes away. God bless, guys.